Hey guys, so I wanted to discuss this announcement that we got in the news, which says, check out the "There's a big announcement coming soon" countdown campaign. So this is actually pretty interesting because normally we wouldn't have a campaign like this until Legends Festival was going to begin. And going off of the past few years, Legends Festival hasn't really started until November. Honestly, like the last portion of November. I believe it started around Thanksgiving time the past 2 years. So this, at least to me, sort of infers that we are probably going to be getting Legends Festival a bit earlier this year, which does kind of make sense because if they're going to base Legends Festival's format this year off of the same format that we had for the anniversary, which is basically banner, and then banner, and then banner, instead of double banner and then banner, then it would make sense for them to begin this a month earlier than it usually begins, right? So if you guys remember how the anniversary worked, it was UI Goku was 1 month, the next month was Dragon Fist Goku, and then the next month was Ultra Super Vegito. So it was kind of like a 2.5 month, almost 3 months long-ish celebration, which is insane. And when you actually think about like all the different content that they released in terms of summonable characters, really wasn't that much different than an ordinary span of 2.5 months. Like, they didn't release more characters than they would have in a normal span of 3 months than they did during the anniversary. It's kind of weird how they did it. But I imagine that because of how financially well the anniversary format performed, there's really no reason for them not to sort of redo the same thing again this year for Legends Festival. So it says we have a big announcement in the next reveals and stuff. It also says big announcement here, which is kind of interesting. Enjoy the lead up to our big announcement with this countdown campaign. A huge campaign is coming and will be unveiled in the big announcement. While you wait, collect items in this countdown event that can be used once the upcoming campaign starts. Collect a lot so you can get a head start in the huge campaign. So the countdown medal, obviously we don't know what this is going to be yet, but this is like such a rare thing for them to do that it would be very strange, at least to me, if this ended up not being like a Legends Festival related. Like having a specific medal for just a normal celebration like kind of doesn't make sense. But that's why to me everything is sort of pointing to it being Legends Festival related. Medals that will automatically be converted into the corresponding items once the campaign begins. That's what this medal is. You collect them now, and then once the actual celebration starts, then they will convert into, you know, whatever the corresponding medal is going to be. Exchange shop lineup, so you can, I guess, exchange these medals for these items here, as an example, once the celebration actually starts. So Chrono Crystals, you got LFZ power, erasers, and energy. There's a big announcement coming soon, countdown missions. And as you can see, the final set of missions does expire on the 18th of this month, which would indicate that's when the celebration's starting, which we do have confirmation for. We'll go over that in a second. There's a big announcement coming soon, countdown login bonus. You can get medals from logging in. Make sure you guys just log in every day. Even if you don't want to do the missions, like at least just log in. Simple, it takes 2 seconds. And then don't miss the next reveals and stuff. It's gonna be big, so don't miss it. Okay, so that's the first announcement. There's definitely a lot of references in here to sort of like large things, you know, big announcement coming soon. There's a big announcement, a huge campaign. Like there's a lot of words that sort of mean the same thing, all corresponding to something being big or large. Next, we have the actual reveals and stuff announcement. Again, this lines up to be on the 18th of October, which makes sense because that corresponds to the final set of these missions going away. So this is when the actual campaign should be beginning. Big announcements coming in reveals and stuff 25. Big, huh? Reveals and stuff number 25 is coming on the 18th of October, and we've got something big to share. Plus, get all the latest update info. You won't want to miss it. So this is typically... yeah, this is the same time as it normally would be. It's 11 p.m. my time, which should be 10 a.m. Eastern time, in the U.S. or Canada, right? You guys can convert that to whatever. Actually, I think if you open the game, it'll automatically convert the time zone to whatever your time zone is. So that's when this will be. But definitely, again, big announcement, something big to share. yeah, it's just very, they're putting these words in here for a reason, I think. And I did actually pull up the Japanese announcement as well, because when they do wordplay like this, I think it makes sense to look at the announcement in other languages to see if they're sort of, pushing the same hidden subliminal messages as they are in English. And I'm not really sure how this looks in like other languages that aren't English and Japanese, because I don't speak other languages. So if any of you guys in the comments like looked at like the French announcement or the Spanish announcement, because I know that the game supports Spanish now, let me know down below if they've sort of used like similar wording in those announcements as they have in the English and Japanese ones. But the Japanese one, it specifically says Judai Happyo, which basically means big announcement. and it's interesting because they specifically put the word in quotation marks. So to me, that's even more confirmation that they're emphasizing something specifically being big. Now, this term, Judai Happyo, it doesn't typically mean like something big in size, like the physical size of something. It typically does sort of fall into the same category as like this, where it's like we've got something big to share, like big as in important, right? But I guess technically, you could potentially use this to mean something like size-wise big, but it doesn't usually refer to that. But just the reason, the fact that it's in quotation marks does leave it a bit suspicious, in my opinion. So we will see if this does actually refer to something big. And obviously with, it being something big, potentially with all the clues that we've had here, that would, in my opinion, obviously refer to either large or, quote unquote, giant characters coming as playable characters, or maybe it's, simply just giant characters coming as like PvE style fights or like raid events or something like that. And that does actually make sense, because if you take a look at the Legends newsletter, the most recent one, which came out on the 26th of September, only like 2 weeks ago, and we scroll all the way down here, the topic I want to look at is Hyperdimensional Co-op Overhaul. Hyperdimensional Co-op is getting an overhaul and an update scheduled for November 2022. So that's going to correspond to whatever this is, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the same thing they announce here, but November of 2022 is going to be in Legends Festival, which I assume this is going to correspond with as well. So, November 2022, 2 characters will be able to be deployed as battle members. So, in my opinion, I'm not really 100% sure what this means, but I am assuming that it means each player will be able to deploy 2 battle members. So basically, if you're in co-op with a buddy, you'll be able to have 4 characters fighting on your side at the same time, which would indicate to me that it makes sense if the enemy is going to be a giant character. You want more allies on your team, right? Changes to the mechanics used when Rising Rush is activated, which also makes sense if there's a large enemy, right? They'd have to obviously change the way that the Rising Rush animation plays out and the different types of like attacks that you're doing and stuff like that. And then they could also tweak like how the actual mechanic is like effects are, right? So both of these changes to me probably are things that they would do if they implement giant characters, right? So yeah, plus many more changes to make co-op more enjoyable are in the works, which again, if they're going to be implementing a giant character as an enemy in co-op, for example, it makes sense that if they're going to be making, adjustments to the mode, they might as well just overhaul other things as well. So this specific section of this newsletter does, I give credence to the theory that this is probably going to be some kind of giant character update. Again, I don't know if this technically means we're going to be able to play as giant characters, but at least giant character implementation into the game in some way. And I think that's a very good thing. And the reason why is because if you actually go and take a look at like how many giant enemies or giant transformations there are in Dragon Ball, there's actually a lot there. So the fact that Legends has sort of cornered itself into a position where they're, the battle system and the landscape of the game doesn't necessarily support giant characters, they're missing a lot of like Dragon Ball characters in the game, and they're sort of not able to completely adapt to, maybe potential new releases of characters that are important if they're, giant specific characters, which we'll talk about in a second. But I just wanted to quickly go through some of the examples of giant characters we could be seeing added to the game. There's actually a lot. Like I was thinking like, okay, yeah, giant characters really don't make up that much of Dragon Ball, but when I looked into it, I was like, okay, yeah, there's more than I thought here. So I actually pulled up the giant form category for Dokkan because I think this is a good way to see some of the, list of characters that actually would be included here. So for example, we actually just got the yellow Tapion as part of the anniversary, right? He released next to the Dragon Fist Goku. So like a standalone Hirudegarn giant character would be crazy good. Like that'd be cool, right? Actually getting to play as Hirudegarn. I think the only other Dragon Ball game I can think of besides Heroes that lets you play as Hirudegarn is like Budokai Tenkaichi 3. I remember playing as him. I remember how cool that was. Then we have like a giant Lord Slug, which could be interesting. And then of course we have like all the Great Ape characters that are, Bardock Great Ape, we have, Torok Great Ape, Kid Goku Great Ape. We have Golden Great Ape Baby, right? I've seen a lot of people wanting LF Super Baby 2 at this point. And if they're actually going to be implementing playable giant characters into the game, I will gladly hold off on an LF Great Ape Baby until we can actually play as the Great Ape, right? I think it makes more sense, right, to instead of just getting simply a playable Super Baby 2 that has like the LF Great Ape Baby or the LF Great Ape, a Golden Great Ape, sort of like kill animation. I want to actually be able to play as the Golden Great Ape, right? So obviously there's the Great Ape Vegeta here as well from the Saiyan Saga. We have him in the game, and technically he is still, like, kind of, I guess, the only Great Ape character in the game. But again, you can't control the Great Ape portion of that character. It only appears in the LF animation, so you can't actually, like, dictate what he does. It's just sort of like a set animation that is there when you get the LF. But for Super Baby 2, like, dude, he did a lot of attacks as Golden Great Ape, and, like, the Golden Great Ape portion of that fight was pretty significant with Super Saiyan 4 Goku. So again, if they have this in the pipeline where they really are gonna be implementing these giant characters as playable characters, I think them holding off on giving us an LF Super Baby 2 is definitely good, because they could potentially even make these transforming characters as well, like Super Baby 2 that transforms into Golden Great Ape. Imagine how sick that would look. Again, I don't know how they're gonna do this because it's kind of hard to imagine the current battle system and the current landscape and camera style of the game supporting giant characters, but this could be a really huge step forward for them. We also have things like the Metal Cooler Core, who obviously is really big. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about with the core, it's basically the final boss of the Metal Cooler movie, where Goku and Vegeta get trapped in the Big Yeti Star and they have to blow up the core or whatever. Then we have some more Great Apes here. We have Anin from Dragon Ball. We have Vegeta, who goes Great Ape in GT. We have Demigra, if they want to ever do like a crossover with Xenoverse or Heroes. At some point, we'll get Xenoverse 3, and it'd be kind of cool if they did do a crossover with like a bunch of Xenoverse characters joining the game. Giant form Demigra, when he transforms into like his giant demon form. Golden Great Ape Super Saiyan 3 Goku. We have Ma Jr. from the end of Dragon Ball when he fights Goku. Obviously, a really, really hype character, I think. Giant Ribrianne, I know everyone wants her. We have Bergamo, who does also go giant in his fight against Goku in the preliminary to Tournament of Power, I believe. Yeah, that was when Goku went blue Kaioken and just like blew him out of the water. We have Cumber. What else? That's probably it, huh? Yeah. So in terms of like the actual characters that go giant form, that have a transformation into giant form, that's mainly what we're looking at. But then in terms of like characters that just are naturally big, that would be difficult for Legends to implement. Like we have like Janemba. Like they've given us the Super Janemba form, but we don't have a normal Fat Janemba form. Reason being is because he's too big. he wouldn't really work in the game, right? So I think they could definitely, if they decide to do this update, give us a just normal Fat Janemba form. I pulled up Broly here because we don't have Bio Broly, and there is a giant Bio Broly. If you guys have ever watched the Bio Broly movie, the final scene basically is Bio Broly sort of like coming out of the ocean. He's like this massive character, so that could giant Bio Broly could potentially be another character here. I pulled up this guy, Half Corrupted Fusions Masu. I because we already have this guy in the game and he is pretty big already. When you go back and rewatch the Vegito Blue versus Corrupted Fusion Zamasu fight, is he bigger technically than this model in the game? Probably not. I mean, you could make a case for them to make like a giant Fusion Zamasu. He is pretty big in the show, and he is pretty big in the game already. I would have to go back and rewatch this, but maybe potentially on the cusp of being considered a giant character. And then we have like Ani Raza from the Tournament of Power. Again, I already mentioned Giant Ribrianne. But that brings me to like the two characters that I think they probably initiated this update for them. Again, not guaranteed that this is a giant update, giant form update or giant character update, but just if they were going to do this, this is probably what initiated it, and it's Superhero. Dragon Ball Super, like there are two major giant characters in that movie. The first one obviously being Cell Max, pretty much the main, final boss of the movie. I've mentioned this many times in prior videos, but them sort of not being able to implement the final boss of the new movie into the game would be a pretty big blow, I think, and a pretty big lost opportunity for Legends if they actually just, as a limitation to their hardware or the limitation to what the game allows you to do, they just weren't able to get the final boss of the new movie into the game. That would be pretty dumb. So some way to get him into the game, I think, would be pretty good. Again, I'm not saying Cell Max is like some really hype character, because I'm not the hugest fan of Cell Max. I think they could have done it a little bit better than how they handled Cell Max, but he still is, the final boss of the movie, and eventually we will get superhero stuff. So if they decide to, make a true full experience of superhero, then they'll have to find a way to include him somehow. And then obviously the second big giant character from Superhero is Orange Piccolo. Orange Piccolo does have a giant transformation. It is directly linked, I already mentioned this, to the giant form sort of Ma Jr., right? Same characters. It's still Piccolo. But he does use the giant form in Superhero against Cell Max in his orange form. So Orange Piccolo goes giant. And I think, if they give us an Orange Piccolo who doesn't have some kind of giant form or giant transformation, then that is also going to be a bit disappointing, because that was a big point of the movie, right? It was giant Orange Piccolo versus Cell Max. Both of them are giant characters. Both of them were centerpieces, focus points of the movie. So it would be kind of a bummer if they didn't actually find a way to include both of those characters into the movie with their giant forms intact. So that's sort of what we have here. There's a lot of giant characters that we could get. Not guaranteed. I'm not saying this is definitely what we're getting, but I think just based off of the wording that they're showing here, and based off of how the Japanese is with the quotation marks here, it does sort of sound to me like they are specifically and deliberately pushing this, big announcement. We've got something big to share. A huge campaign, like just all these words that all mean the same thing, and that means big. So let me know down below what you guys think of this potentially being the main theme of this announcement, as well as the fact that Legends Festival could actually be earlier this year to sort of correspond with the same format we got as part of the 4-year anniversary. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in the next one.